Studio One at NBC Burbank on March 22, 1979. There were 300 people there. A lot of people watched at home. But what did they do after the cameras stopped? There were only 17 people who saw it, and they all kept that secret with them until they died. That night's taping of The Tonight Show had gone great. It was 5:30 in the evening when Carson came out from behind the curtain. That's right. That famous smile is still there. For 17 years, he did this 5 nights a week, so his movement was smooth and well-honed. The one-sided speech killed. Carter's energy problem is the subject of political jokes. A part about gas lines that made everyone laugh out loud. As always, Johnny was in charge, as everyone in the United States thought he would be. Ed McMahon laughed out loud at every beat. The band played really well. Everything worked like a clock. Everything went well. Things were different behind the scenes, though. John Wayne got there a long time early. For a man who always showed up on time. It was strange. It had already spread through the Duke's body by the time he died. He was 71 years old. He had less than a year to live, they told him. Everyone at NBC knew. It looked like everyone didn't. Wayne was in the green room by himself and shifting something around in his hands. There was something in his hand that the stage manager saw as he walked by. A military compass from the 1950s that Navy officers used to carry. The stage manager thought Wayne might use it on radio as a prop for a story. It wasn't. At 6:15 p.m. Johnny walked by the green room during the break between commercials before Wayne's show. The door was wide open. They looked at each other. Wayne gave a single nod. Johnny said yes again. 3 nods from 2 old friends were all that was said. Their look at each other did make something happen, though. Something heavy. Everyone in the room could hear Ed McMahon's voice. He's been in over 170 movies and goes by the name The Duke. He's a hero in America. Hello, John Wayne. The crowd blew up. Thank you very much. Thanks. Love. Love for a dying legend who was making one of his last public visits. Wayne walked out the door slowly and with care. His body told doctors that he had cancer and was dying. But that thing that made him seem bigger than life, his presence, still filled the room. He got up and gave him a handshake. It was a longer greeting than usual. Both men held on for too long at one point, like they didn't want to let go. Wayne sat down in the guest chair. The meeting began. It was like any other 8 minutes. Wayne talked about the time he worked with Howard Hawks. People laughed when the man tried to sound like Dean Martin. He laughed about how old he was and how his horse could now run faster than him. The sets Johnny gave him were great. Wayne came up with great jokes. The work of 2 great artists. After that, something changed. The crew saw it, but you wouldn't have if you weren't paying close attention. It was seen by the people who ran the cams. Ed McMahon saw it for sure. Wayne was asked by John Q. Public about his early work and the movies that gave him his fame. In that rough voice that had been the voice of American manhood for 40 years, Wayne said something that didn't sound like it was meant to be mean. Johnny, I think about those young guys who fought in Korea. The war wasn't just in their minds, those boys really lived through it. I was on a USO tour in Time 52. Went to see some military ships off the coast. I saw things that I will never forget. The words were just there. Wayne had said something like that a million times. Always the same, always making me miss home. John Carson's face did change in some way for a very short time, though. The cameras caught a small look that most people watching at home would miss. He twitched his eyes and clenched his jaw. More weight was put on the hand that was sitting on his desk. The smile came back right away. Ideal, skilled, and without any mistakes. Johnny said in a smooth voice, "Those men were brave." He then changed the subject. Wayne talked for a while. The interview went on. There are 9 more minutes of great TV left. Wayne told a story about John Ford. John laughed at the right times. The crowd was thrilled. The United States was happy. At 6:47 p.m., the part was over. Wayne hadn't been on in 17 minutes. The camera heard Johnny say, "We'll be back right after this." The red light went out. "Cut," the director told them. "It's 3 minutes for all of you." The smile stayed, but Johnny Carson's eyes went dark, completely dark, empty, hollow. His skin looked healthy under the studio lights, but it turned gray, really gray. His hands started shaking, not shaking, shaking like a current was running through them. He tried to get up from behind his desk, but his legs didn't feel right, so he grabbed the edge of the desk to steady himself. John Wayne saw this change happen right in front of him. The Duke's normally serious face broke, and his eyes got really big. Wayne said quietly, "Johnny," but Johnny didn't answer. He was staring at nothing or something that only he could see. His breathing had changed, it was short and shallow. Ed McMahon jumped up from his chair and asked, "What's wrong, Johnny?" Carson's eyes were fixed on something in the middle distance. People in the audience started to notice something was wrong. The chatter stopped. A man was having some kind of breakdown 3 feet in front of 300 people. Fred Dordova, the show's producer, rushed onto the stage from the wings and said, "Johnny, talk to us." Johnny's mouth opened wide, but he didn't say anything. He did it again, and still nothing. He put his hand to his throat as if he were checking to see if he could still breathe. Wayne slowly got up and walked over to where Johnny was standing. The Duke touched Johnny on the arm and said softly, "Pilgrim, look at me, Johnny." Carson finally looked at Wayne and locked onto his face. What John Wayne saw in his friend's eyes made the toughest man in Hollywood take a step back in fear. Johnny's lips were moving, making sounds, but nothing came out. Wayne leaned in closer to try to hear, and Johnny said 3 words, "The water was red." Wayne's face turned pale, and he turned to Fred Dortaiva and said, "When John Wayne told you to do something, you did it." Fred hesitated for a second, then grabbed his walkie-talkie and said, "Clear Studio 1, everyone out, medical emergency." The audience started leaving, confused, worried, and some crying. They had just seen America's most beloved host fall apart in front of them. The crew moved more slowly, unwilling to leave. Some of them had worked with Johnny for years, some for almost 20 years, and they had never seen him like this before. Wayne barked again. In just 90 seconds, only John Wayne, Johnny Carson, Ed McMahon, and Fred Dortaiva were left in the studio. Wayne told the other 2 men, "You too, John, I'm his producer." "I can't." Fred got going. "You will be able to." "Duke, I've known him for 17 years, Ed McMahon said as he looked at Johnny and then at Wayne. A minute was given. Wayne said in a softer voice, "I should." After a slow nod, Ed and Fred left through the side door. 15 minutes ago, the huge studio was full of light and laughter. Now it was silent and empty, with only 2 men, one standing and the other barely holding himself together. Wayne led Johnny to the couch where guests were sitting, and Carson fell asleep on it. Wayne sat next to him, close and protective. "I saw the ships, Johnny," the Duke said quietly. March 1952. "I was on that tour with the USO. What did they get out of the water?" Johnny's eyes went straight to Wayne's face as his head snapped up. "Looking for." "You were there?" His voice was rough and broken. Wayne told him, "Not on your ship." "But I heard what they said. I saw the damage. I saw what it did to the men who were there." Johnny's face got squished. He looked like a scared child, even though he was 47 years old and the king of late-night TV. "My wives, Ed, and no one else knew," Johnny whispered. "That's what we all did, Pilgrim. I buried it so deep I thought I killed it," Wayne said slowly. "We buried it when we got home. We told ourselves everything was okay." "I've never been fine, Johnny," he said, his voice rising. "I've closed my eyes every night for 27 years and seen it, the water, the blood, the bodies and bits of bodies of young men, Duke, ages 18 to 19. They were alive and then they weren't." John Wayne, who had played some of the toughest roles in movie history, put his arm around Johnny Carson and held him while he cried. If this story hits you hard, leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. What happens next will change the way you see both of these men forever. For 6 minutes, Johnny Carson cried. He let out deep sobs that he had been holding in for almost 30 years. Wayne held him and didn't say anything because there wasn't anything to say. Finally, Johnny pulled away and wiped his face with his hands. "How did you know?" he asked in a hurried way. Wayne reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out that old compass. "It belonged to a kid I met on one of those ships. He gave it to me because he wouldn't need it anymore because he was going to be sent home in 3 weeks. Johnny stared at the compass. "He didn't make it home," Wayne said quietly. "He didn't. I was a naval ensign doing reconnaissance work off the Korean coast. We weren't supposed to see combat." Up until March 14, 1952, Wayne nodded and told him to keep going. That night, a transport ship hit a mine. We heard the explosion from 2 miles away, and by the time we got there, Johnny's voice had stopped. He forced himself to keep going. The ship had broken apart, and men were screaming and burning in the water. Some were already dead, and others were dying as we pulled them out. We worked for 7 hours pulling bodies from the water, some whole and most not. The water was so cold that they were dying of hypothermia. I held a kid's hand as he died. He kept asking for his mother. I had to lie to Wayne and tell him he was going to be okay even though his jaw was so clenched that his teeth should have broken. That night, we pulled 47 men from the water, and Johnny continued. 12 of them survived, but 35 died. For the next 73 days, until my service ended, I had to keep working, do my job, and act like I was fine because that's what you did. You buried it, locked it away, and never talked about it. When I got home, Johnny's voice was barely audible because no one wanted to hear about it. Korea was the forgotten war, and everyone wanted to move on. I went on TV, became funny and charming, and became the guy who made Americans laugh before they went to bed. But I never told anyone what I saw because who wants to hear about boys calling for their mothers as they drown in cold water? Wayne put his hand on Johnny's shoulder and said, "I want to hear it because I've been carrying my own version of that night for 27 years, too." Johnny looked at Wayne and said, "You saw something." Wayne said, "Different ship, different event, but same ocean, same war, same kids dying for a war their country wanted to forget." The two men didn't say anything for a long time. Then Johnny asked the question he had never been able to ask anyone else. "Duke, does it ever end? Do you ever not see it?" John Wayne asked his friend. For 50 years, he had played heroes who were never scared, broke, or lost. He looked at his friend with all honesty. He just said, "No. It's just something you get used to." Johnny gave a slow nod. It seemed like this answer was just what he needed to hear. Not empty comfort or fake hope, just the truth. Johnny said, "When you said you'd been to ships in 1952, it all came back to me. I felt like I was standing on that deck again, like it was happening right now. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I was lost in it. That's what happens. You keep going because those kids couldn't. You keep